What up, friends? I'm James, your host, and today I'm going to be reviewing the newest album by Phantogram, Ceremony. Phantogram returned 4 years later after their previous album 3 to deliver this new album to us. The duo are no strangers to exploring many different sonic textures over the course of their career, ranging from things like indie pop, electronica, electronic rock, and even trip-hop in some instances. Their newest record sees them expanding on that even further, honing in on their trip-hop influences along with bringing in some more hardcore hip-hop and some soul influences here and there too. With Dear God, the opener, the soulful sample leading into the blissful keys is such a fantastic opener to the album. I love this track. I also love how the sample even sticks around a bit in the main beat too. It's not just a one-off thing. The vocals are very light and whimsical, but they also have a tinge of sadness to it too. I also love the delivery of the verses too. It has this sort of bouncing rhythm and passion behind it that's kind of infectious. The entire song just seems to be a bit of like a hopeless jam in the best way. Lyrically, it is a bit esoteric, but it seems to be about how she's been feeling lost recently but finds some sense of solace in religion. Or it could just be a metaphor for looking for any sort of solace in general. In a Spiral is another great tune. It immediately goes for a darker tone, much more reminiscent of past Phantogram songs. The pop delivery on the verses is also a pretty interesting contrast to the hectic and dark sample, along with the heavier guitar passages. The rolling drums just kind of waterfalling onto the mesmerizing chorus is also a really cool effect. The entire track leans on the overwhelming side, but it really does fit lyrics about being stuck in a haze. It also fits reliving dark experiences in your life, like a kind of anxiety in a way. Into Happiness explores one of Phantogram's more underrated sounds, I think, with Josh and Sarah having two distinct parts and vocals, and also how they combine them together. This track is about the death of Sarah's sister, along with their musical journey as a whole. It makes it a bittersweet tune with a melancholic synth and a fitting wall of noise behind it that just make the mind buzz. I like the two different vocal styles, giving it a sort of unique edge on the album, and I think this sort of sound really fits the lyrics and just how overwhelming and also like how it comes from multiple different perspectives. I like that aspect of the track a lot. Unfortunately for me though, Pedestal is a big weak spot on the record. The beat is fairly generic, and I really don't care for the vocals on the chorus or how they're distorted throughout the rest of the track. It's very uninteresting compared to the previous song, and it just doesn't fit the record very well overall either. I do like the sort of scratchy guitar elements that add a very sort of angled and jagged sound to the song, but overall this one is just pretty lackluster, unfortunately. Immediately back to the highlights though, we have Love Me Now. This one's more intense beat, has a unique combination of their trip-hop sound, but also their electronic rock sound, too. The horns add this sense of drama, which is very fitting considering there's a relationship drama playing out in the lyrics right now. It seems like from the lyrics that her partner or lover or whatever they are doesn't appreciate her for who she is, and I think the guitar solo adds a very pleasant weight to the lyrics. It really fits the whole scene playing out here. And it's also one of the few instances of guitar solos on the album, so I think it was fitting in that regard too. Now Let Me Down gets a bit more industrial, which I always like. The wailing of the vocals really mesh well with the static bass and very rigid beat. The synth also adds a pretty ominous touch to the chorus that I really appreciate too. I also love how they use the guitar as a sort of like siren sound effect during the second verse, and the drop on this song is just insane. Like, what a highlight. Next we get to Mr. Impossible, my favorite song on the record. Once again, Sarah and Josh are trading off vocals here, with her handling the intro and the chorus, and he handling the verses. The horns also make a very triumphant return until the song kind of delves into a very smooth trip-hop-like beat. I just love the sinister vibes that permeate throughout this song. I also really like how they interact with that distorted Mr. Impossible sample, vocal line, whatever it is. I just love how they interact with it. The swirling synth at the end of the chorus also adds a sort of hypnotic effect. Lyrically, it's also pretty ominous, as this sort of Mr. Impossible character seems to be more like a metaphor to this sort of hurdle that the group has to overcome. Perhaps it's depression, anxiety, you name it, but the feeling of dread combating with hope is painfully clear. Glowing is next, and unfortunately, I don't really care for this one either. Overall, it's just kind of boring. It just has very sparse instrumentation. There's not a lot going on with it. Vocally, it's pretty good, but the lyrics I find are kind of generic, and there's just not much else in the song that makes up for it, unfortunately. Ceremony, the title track, however, is a pretty fitting closer to the album, I think. It serves as a sort of sorrowful outro to the album, and the trip-hop vibes here are immense. It also has this haunting guitar and empty drums that serve as the perfect backdrop of Sarah pining about when everything is going to be okay. I especially love the imagery of neon and night, etc. on the final verse, and how it just culminates into this sort of noise outro. Overall, it's another pretty good album by Phantogram. I really do like the added emphasis on the trip-hop sounds, along with them bringing in a few more hardcore hip-hop influences, and also how they combined it with the electronic rock sound that they're known for pretty well. However, some of their poppier moments kind of get in the way of the darkness a little bit and shift the album's mood in a kind of awkward direction. I also would have liked to see more soul elements intertwined with the rest of the album, like in Dear God. I think they could have really added to the emotional impact of this album, and I also think it would have meshed with the trip-hop sounds really well. All in all, just a very good collection of songs with a few missteps here and there. I'm feeling a decent 7 on Phantogram's Ceremony. Pretty good. Pretty good. Of course, we do have to talk about the album cover on the show, and I think it's a pretty good album cover. I really like the color combination. The gray with the very select red is really nice. I like the jagged image. I think it kind of speaks for the sort of noisy and also just uncertain feeling that they're portraying in the lyrics. It feels like they're not all together, and that's kind of what the album is about. It's a pretty good album cover overall. But that is all I had to say about Phantogram's Ceremony. Did you guys like it? Did you like the added hip-hop and hardcore trip-hops, etc., etc., etc.? What am I even saying at this point? Let me know. And until the next one, farewell.